Welcome to the Checkup with Dr. Bryan Terry, paid for by Bryan Terry for State Representative Cheryl Terry Treasurer. I'm Dr. Bryan Terry, State Representative in District 48 in Tennessee, and I wanted to give everybody a brief checkup on the expansion lawsuit. As most people are aware, BFI has filed for a vertical expansion at Middle Point Landfill. However, there is dispute ongoing about the application, and in particular the way that the application has been filed and how TDEC has been evaluating the application. So what BFI or Republic has done is they have filed an application in what they are considering a major modification of the landfill, and TDEC had 45 days to process that application for completeness, and so by statute TDEC was following that process. The problem, though, that Murfreesboro did point out is that it wasn't a major modification. It was actually a vertical expansion or an expansion of the landfill, and that requires a different process altogether. That requires that the Regional Solid Waste Board also review the application and determine whether or not it would even fit into the 10-year plan for the region. One thing that I also pointed out to the city was a state law that we passed a few years ago that kind of mirrored what's called the Chevron doctrine at the federal level, in that if the law doesn't explicitly state something, the department or agency cannot unilaterally change law or come up with their own regulation. And the law also states that if there is ambiguity in that, then the courts must rule against the agency. So in this case, expansion is not defined to mean only a lateral expansion, or moving the footprint of the landfill to make it bigger in acreage. Expansion also means vertical expansion, and there's some documentation at the federal level where that comes into play as well. So Murfreesboro filed a lawsuit to have an injunction in order for TDEC to stop evaluating the application because it was effectively the wrong type of application. It was not a major modification, it was an expansion. And the Davidson courtroom judge actually agreed with the city on this particular issue, and they did explicitly talk about how the law does not define an expansion to be just horizontal, and they are supposed to rule against the agency, which they did. So in their ruling, they did an injunction and had TDEC stop with their application review process, but they also issued what's called a writ of mandamus, which is effectively a go order. And so what they're saying is, TDEC stop, but then the regional board should go ahead with their review of the application, because that's the way that it should have been done to begin with. So following that first ruling, and I think people need to understand that the Attorney General's office, they represent the state, and they represent these parties, or these agencies and departments, and they also represent the governor, or they represent us as state representatives, but they represent TDEC in this matter, and so they effectively challenged or appealed the ruling, and that appeal failed. So TDEC, with the AG's office, then filed for a motion to dismiss. Now, I think it's important for people to understand this, that the philosophical issue about whether a vertical expansion is an expansion or major modification, I don't know that that's what the argument per se is, what the AG's office or TDEC is looking for. My understanding is that the issue or the concern that they're looking for is that the writ of mandamus was issued to TDEC to start something, and that the AG's office is concerned that the way that the writ was ordered, it's ordered for the regional board to start the review process, but the regional board is not a party to the lawsuit. And so my understanding is that the AG's office is concerned about not just the case at hand of whether the application should be halted or stopped, or stop the expansion, but how the way the writ was issued, how it may affect other parts of law that has absolutely nothing to do with the landfill. So they did ask for a motion to dismiss. The original judge saw that, and that Davidson County Court again rejected the dismissal request as it relates to the landfill lawsuit, and upheld the writ of mandamus requiring regional review and approval of the BFI application before TDEC can resume processing the application. So, this was expected, as it's rare for a judge to disagree with their previous ruling, and so it's my understanding that the AG's office will appeal this to a different court, which is going to be a 3-judge panel that will hear that appeal. I'm not sure what the time frame will be for that, but it is clear from the judge's ruling and from our Tennessee statutes that BFI is applying for an expansion, and any application for such must go before the region for their approval. And so I want to read this to you from the judgment handed down. So the judge says, "It is undisputed that this process has not been started for the proposed expansion. Therefore, defendant is commanded to refrain from further processing of the BFI landfill expansion application in accordance with Tennessee Code unless and until such time as the region has rendered its decision to the Commissioner on the expansion application pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 68-211-814B2A. So to me, it's very evident and very clear that this application, or what they're trying to do out there, is an expansion, and it has to go before the regional board and fit within the 10-year plan of the regional board, which it does not. And so right now what we're looking at is waiting for that appeal to the 3-judge panel and kind of see where it goes from there. As everybody should be aware, I'm obviously adamantly opposed to any expansion, and doing all that I can to fight any expansion of Middle Point landfill. And so I'm going to try to keep you guys up to date as possible, but just know this is a process, and the philosophy behind this and what exactly they're doing is on the side of our community and on the side of Murfreesboro. It's just going to take time to play out, and we will see where it goes from there. As everybody is adamantly aware, I am opposed to any expansion of Middle Point Landfill, and I'm going to keep doing my best to support our community and Murfreesboro in their fight against the expansion at Middle Point. I'm going to do all I can to keep you guys informed. I appreciate when everybody stays vigilant and gets information to me, and it definitely helps when we're trying to keep Middle Point accountable. So, with Liberty, this is Dr. Bryan Terry.